Welcome back to Marcus Maths. Today we have a brand new topic that we're going to be reviewing. In fact, this is the first time I've done an SAT reading video. Today we're going to be reviewing the unit test for advanced informations and ideas inside of Khan Academy's digital SAT reading practice. So we have 10 questions here. We're going to be going over the thought process of how you can solve each one of these, starting with this first question. So Valia is a 1907 short story by this person. In the story, the author emphasizes that the setting is where the character Valia is reading is nearly quiet. Is nearly silent. So the setting is nearly silent, and we need to find a quote from this story that most effectively illustrates this claim that the setting is silent. All right, A does not talk about the silence of the setting. Neither does B. But we can see answer choice C emphasizes that everything in the room was quiet, so quiet that the only thing to be heard was the rustling of the pages he turned. Alright, that is large emphasis on the setting where he's reading that is nearly silent. So answer choice C is very obviously the answer here. All we have to do is break down some of the keywords in this question, and then we are led to answer choice C. That is the answer. Answer choice D mentions stiffness and the temperature, not related to the silence of the setting. Okay, taking a look at the second question, we have a diagram in table format here talking about these different language families, the different languages inside of the families. For corn, and then seeing if the proposed origin of the vocabulary is of the Toto language family. So we have all these different words for corn pretty much, and two of them are part of the same Toto language family, and we can already start drawing conclusions that they are quite similar. We have this K apostrophes AS that is common in both. Meanwhile, we in the other two language families that are non-related to the Toto language families, they are completely different. All right, let's read through our text here, and we are going to use data from the table to complete the statement. Okay, in Caddo, a language formed what is now the U.S. Southeast. We have Caddoan and the Caddo language right here. Vocabulary pertaining to corn cultivation represents equivalent vocabulary in the Toto language family in Mexico. Okay, this resemblance is perhaps attributable to cultural contact. Such words could have entered the Caddo through the intermediary of the neighboring but unrelated Chitimacha language, concurrent with the dissemination of corn itself from Mexico. So we have the Chit language right here, and we can see that they are also related to the Toto language family. All right, concurrent with the dissemination of corn itself from Mexico into the southeast after 700 CE, that the vocabulary pertaining to domestic crops accompanies them as they diffuse into new regions is an established phenomenon globally. Crops may also be decoupled, so separate from vocabulary altogether. Corn cultivation became ubiquitous among the southeastern tribes, yet we have some more southeastern tribes here, the Cherokee and the Chickasaw, that do not have the shared language family. So let's take a look at our answer choices to see which data from the table pertains to this claim. The origins of vocabulary pertaining to the crop vary across languages of the region, with the words for corn in the Cherokee and Muskogean languages showing no demonstrable relationship to Toto vocabulary. This answer choice pretty much explains it all, saying that even though, usually disseminates, we can see obviously here that the vocabulary has been decoupled with some of the corn, because some of these southeastern tribes, such as the Cherokee and the Chickasaw and equivalent tribes, they don't show any relationship, as we see with their difference in words. All right. Apart from this, answer choice B talks for common root and then lost certain consonant sounds. That's not demonstrated in the table. Divergence of the Caddo word from the a word that originated it, we can see that they're quite similar. So that doesn't discuss the decoupling of vocabulary. And then answer choice D. And we can see that answer choice D is incorrect, as it doesn't really talk about the decoupling of the language, just saying how it is diverse, but not how it pertains to the word that represents corn. All right, so answer choice A is indeed correct. Let's move on to our next question here. Which choice most logically completes the text? So we're going to be looking for claims once again. It's not as obvious as the other answer choice, which is talking directly about our claims, but we're going to be looking for these claims once again, and we just need something here that supports one of those claims. All right, so Laura Mulvey has theorized that in narrative film, shots issuing from a protagonist's point of view compel viewers to identify with the character. Such identification is heightened by invisible editing, or editing so inconspicuous that it renders cuts between shots almost unnoticeable. Conversely, Mulvey proposes that conspicuous editing, or an absence of point of view shots, would induce a more critical stance towards a protagonist. For example, the attic scene in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, a conspicuously edited sequence of tens of shots, few of which correspond to the protagonist's point of view. According to Mulvey's logic, the scene should affect viewers by, we have the claim right here, proposes that an absence of these point of view shots would induce a more critical stance towards a protagonist. So we're looking for one of these answer choices that talks about a more critical stance towards the protagonist. All right. We can see that answer choice D here most closely represents that, as the identification with the protagonist is lessens, meaning that they'll likely be more critical towards the protagonist if you do not identify with them, if not alienating, which is a negative connotation word, from the character altogether. This most logically completes the text, fully supports a movie's proposal in that conversely sentence. Okay. On to the next question here. We have quite a paragraph. Let's take a look at the question before we tackle that. What does the text most strongly suggest about the use of electromagnets in protein crystallization research? All right, use of electromagnets in protein crystallization research. We're going to have to look for those keywords. Let's read through the passage. Studies using magnetic fields in protein crystallization have attracted substantial interest, as a magnetic field may provide special environment to alter or improve the quality of protein crystals. Okay, so that's what the research is going to be looking into. In a review of hardware used for protein crystallization, Erkayan et al. Examine various magnet systems employed in this research. Superconducting magnets, currently the most widely utilized, can sustain stable fields of up to 27 Tesla for years, but they are expensive to maintain due to their need for cooling with liquid nitrogen or helium. One alternative is permanent magnet systems, which can maintain long-term magnetic stability and have almost negligible hardware and running costs. However, their magnetic strength is significantly lower, and it is difficult to adjust the magnitude and direction of the field. Another low-cost option is electromagnets. There we go. The strength of the magnetic field generated by an electromagnet is typically lower than that of a superconducting or permanent magnet, and they require continuous power, but the direction and magnitude of the magnetic force can be adjusted by changing the intensity and direction of the current. This range of options presents researchers with trade-offs among field strength, duration, adjustability, and operational costs, depending on the specific requirements and constraints of the research. So we're obviously going to be focusing on this section of the text, talking about electromagnets and how the strength is lower and they require the power, but you can control the direction and magnitude of the magnetic force. Let's take a look. All right, they maintain more stable magnetic fields over long periods than do permanent magnets, but it requires significantly more maintenance. This isn't directly related to our description of our electromagnets here, because their main benefit is that the direction and magnitude can be adjusted. It can be controlled. All right, B, they offer more precise control over magnetic fields than do permanent magnets, but they cannot generate fields strong enough for some research applications. This perfectly describes electromagnets. As we see here, they kind of deal with the negative of are permanent magnets because you can actually control how they move, but they are very low power, so they might not be enough for some research applications. There we go. On to answer, question number 5. A member of the Otomi, an indigenous people in central Mexico, Octavio Meladin immigrated to the United States as a child, and his sculpture bears the impress of traditions on both sides of the border. US-based modernist sculpture, Mexican modernist painting, Otomi art, and the ancient sculpture of other Mexican indigenous people, including the Maya. Okay, so lots of influences here. In his 1950 masterpiece, History of Mexico, Medallion fuses these influences into a style so idiosyncratic that it resists efforts to view his work through the lens of nationality or cultural identity. So all these influences are blended so well that you can't identify it with one. That's what this highlighted sentence is basically saying. Artists, he insists, should strive for individual expression even as they draw inspiration from their heritage and communities where they live and work. So he doesn't want to identify with his heritage or these different communities. He wants to fuse them together to create something that's unique, individual expression, as we see here. All right, which quotation from an art critic most directly challenges the underlying claim in the text? So we're trying to oppose this claim. All right, while History of Mexico features modernist motifs, it relies primarily on angular human forms and profile, a staple of Maya sculpture, and thus invites classification as indigenous art. All right. As we can see here, Medallion is trying to resist efforts to view his work through a lens of nationality or cultural identity, but this critic here directly challenges that by classifying it as indigenous art, especially of that Mayan influence that was mentioned. So this directly challenges it. It goes directly against the resisting efforts by actually viewing the work through a lens of nationality or cultural identity. That direct contrast is going to lead A to be likely the correct answer. Let's just review the rest of these really quickly. The number of ancient indigenous traditions pictured on the form, pictured human forms and profile. The forms populating the surface of a history of Mexico suggests specifically Mayan influence. This talks about influence. It doesn't go as far to say classification. So it's not as correct as answer choice A. A synthesis of ancient and modernist traditions functions as a stylistic parallel to the work's subject matter. This one is not really directly contradicting. And then many critics focus on indigenous influences and other key works by Medallion to the exclusion of influences from non-indigenous art. Just discusses the influences, but it's not once again a direct challenge. So we have a direct challenge to the quotation in answer choice A, and it is indeed correct. All right. We have a graph here. Let's look at this graph. Home heating needs met with subsurface thermal pollution for 2 temperature conditions by percentage of sites. So local heating needs met is 0% for current surface temperature. While for 0% of local heating needs met, percentage of all sites analyzed is 85% for those at current surface temperature. Now, there's a maximum plausible surface temperature. We see there's more than 25% of local heating needs are met for the majority of sites analyzed. As we can see here, with two of these temperature conditions, when the surface temperature is at the maximum of plausibility, there is a greater likelihood that local heating needs are met. When it is at current surface temperature, at all the sites analyzed, it is very unlikely that these local heating needs are met. Let's take a look at our paragraph. Urbanization, industrialization, and warming climate create thermal pollution, excess heat in shallow subsurface soil. Susan A. Benz and colleagues analyzed thousands of sites on 3 continents under one scenario in which surface temperature remains at the current level, and under another in which surface reaches the maximum plausible temperature. They then categorized each sites according to the percentage of local home heating needs that could be met using this excess subsurface heat. The team concluded that if surface temperature approaches a maximum plausible level, the percentage of sites where thermal pollution could feasibly contribute to the meeting home heating needs will increase. As we can see, this is supported by the graph because at these maximum plausible surface temperature, more than 25% could have their local heating needs met, where this is pretty much non-existent if they're at the current surface temperature. All right, which best describes data in the graph that supports this conclusion? Under both temperature conditions, less than 10% of the sites were in the up to 25% group. That's incorrect. Direct contradiction is maximum plausible surface temperature over just under 80% of the sites reach more than 25%. Okay, answer choice B. At current surface temperatures, more than 80% of the sites have no need for supplemental local home heating from subsurface thermal pollution, but a maximum plausible surface temperature, more than 70% of the sites exhibit significantly greater home heating needs. As we can see here, it's talking about the needs that are met, so this might not be the correct answer. At current surface temperatures, more than 80% of the sites can meet, at most, 25% of their local heating needs. Yeah, C is describing the graph a lot better than B did. With subsurface thermal pollution, but at maximum plausible surface temperature, more than 80% of the sites can meet greater than 25% of local home heating needs. Now looking at answer choice D, at current surface temperatures, more than 80% of the sites cannot use subsurface thermal pollution to meet any portion of local heating needs, but at maximum plausible surface temperature, that percentage drops to below 20%. So what we need to take a look here, once again, their conclusion is that if surface temperature approaches a maximum plausible level, the percentage of sites where thermal pollution could feasibly contribute to meeting home needs will increase. So as the surface temperature approaches this level, percentage increases. The only answer that really talks to this is answer choice D, because it most accurately describes the data. With answer choice C, the second part here is actually incorrect. It's less than 80% of sites can meet greater than 25%, as we can see here. More than 25%, it's less than, it's not more than. So answer choice C is correct. Answer choice B incorrectly interprets the graph. Because it's not they have no need for supplemental local home heating, is that it is they cannot use subsurface thermal pollution to meet any portion of their local home needs as described in answer choice D. And then answer choice A is just incorrect once again. So these three have incorrect claims or misattribute the categories for the data. If we take a look at answer choice D, it actually explains it well that more than 80% of the sites cannot use subsurface thermal pollution to meet any portion of their local home needs, which is correct. But at the maximum plausible surface temperature, that percentage drops to below 20%. Once again, described correctly. Answer choice D is the correct answer. Yep, misreads the graph, and misreads the graph. So every part of the answer choice has to be correct in order for the answer choice to be correct. Moving on to question number 7. To better understand the burrowing habits of the tiger pistol shrimp, some studies have used resin casing to obtain precise measurements of the shrimp's burrows. Resin casing involves completely filling an empty burrow with a liquid plastic that hardens to create a three-dimensional model. However, recovering the model inevitably requires destroying the burrow. In a 2022 study, Miyu and colleagues discovered that an X-ray computed tomography scanner or CT scanner can accurately record a burrow's measurements both at a moment in time and throughout the entire burrow building process. Something that's impossible with resin casing because we just need to fill a completely an already completed empty burrow, as we can see here with the resin casing process. Resin casing can only be used on burrows below a certain size, not discussed. It does not allow for multiple castings of the same burrow over time. This is true. The process of recovering the model distorts the resin shape. That is incorrect. It completely destroys the burrow. And the casting process takes more time than blank takes to construct a burrow. Once again, incorrect. Because how the resin casing work, it can only happen once, but if you recover it, it destroys the burrow completely. So it does not allow for multiple castings of the same burrow over time. For example, if you just get a burrow in the initial stages of building development, if you take a resin casing and then you take it out, it completely eliminates the burrow, so the tiger shrimp would have to start completely again. So answer choice B is indeed correct. Okay, moving on to question number 8. We have a passage here, and we're once again looking for what logically completes the text. Okay, let's read through it. Gestures in painting are typically thought of as bold, expressive brushstrokes. In the 1970s, American painter Jack Whitten built a 12-foot tool he named the Developer to apply paint to an entire canvas in one motion. resulting in a series of slab paintings from that decade. Whitten describes the process as making an entire painting in one gesture, signaling a clear departure from the prevalence of gestures in his work from the 1760s. Some art historians claim this shift represents removing gesture from the process. Therefore, regardless of whether using the developer consists a gesture, both Whitten and these art historians likely agree that any tool that a painter uses to create an artwork is capable of creating gestures. Art historians claim this represents removing it from the process, so they say the developer removes it from the process. So they would not agree on that. Whitten's work from the 1960s exhibits many more gestures than his work in the 1970s. 70s does. I think that they can both agree here because he describes it as one, whether regardless with the art historians in this in the 70s claim that it removes gesture from the process. All right, so let's look at answer choice C. Whitten became less interested in exploring the role of gesture in his work as his career progressed. That is incorrect. He tries to redefine the whole thing, and then answer choice D talks about realism, which is not relevant. So answer choice B is going to be correct because they can say that even if the art historians say that there were no gestures at all, they can agree that the 1760s contains many more than the work in 1970s does, whether the 1970s work contains 1 or 0 according to their interpretations of what gesture is. So answer choice B is indeed correct here. All right, another graph. We have municipalities' response to inquiries about potential incentives for firm. All right, when a lot of municipalities have no response to inquiries about potential incentives for firm, about an equal amount of them before and after the election responded to inquiry, and about the same offered incentive as well. So there's very little change here before and after the election. In the United States, firms often seek incentives from municipal governments to expand to those municipalities. A team of political scientists hypothesized that municipalities are much more likely to respond to firms and offer incentives if expansions can be announced in time to benefit local elected officials than if they can't. It's not really proven correct because we can see there's no difference before and after the election. The team contacted officials in thousands of municipalities inquiring about incentives for a firm looking to expand and indicating that the firm would announce its expansion on a day either just before or after the next election. There was no difference. Which choice best describes data from the graph that weakens the team's hypothesis? As we can see here, it's very weak because there was not a lot of change. A large majority of the municipalities that received an inquiry mentioning plans for an announcement before. Nope, this does not weaken their claim. The proportion of municipalities that responded to the inquiry or offered incentives didn't substantially differ across the announcement timing conditions. And choice B is correct because they say that they are much more likely to respond in that difference of election times. All right, answer choice B is correct. Moving on to our last question here. We're trying to support the scientist's hypothesis in this one. Let's read through the graph. Let's read through the text. Archaeologists studying ancient Roman concrete have long wondered why certain 2,000-year-old structures remain remarkably intact while modern concrete often deteriorates within decades. A material scientist hypothesizes that the exceptional durability of Roman concrete isn't just due to its basic ingredients, but rather results from a chemical process that occurs over time. So we're going to support that this chemical process that occurs over time does exist, and it does result in the durability of Roman concrete. Let's take a look. Extensive analysis of volcanic ash samples from Roman quarries show that these materials contain precise combinations of aluminum and silica compounds that, when mixed with lime, created exceptionally strong bonds in the initial hardening process. All right, this doesn't necessarily say a chemical process that occurs over time. It says initial. Let's take a look at answer choice B. An examination of ancient Roman harbor structures reveals that seawater gradually triggered reactions between volcanic ash and lime in the concrete, forming new crystalline materials that strengthen the material and automatically seal developing cracks. This is exactly what the claim is discussing. A chemical process that occurs over time that results in the durability of Roman concrete outside of its basic ingredients. So the seawater causing these different reactions. And choice B is indeed the correct answer for this question. Thank you for sticking with me this whole SAT reading video. I hope this helps with these massive passages and these graphs when it comes to making claims, supporting claims, continuing sentences in a logical manner. Well, this was definitely a longer video than I expected. Look forward to another couple videos over SAT reading in the future that will once again be uploaded on Sunday. But throughout the week, we are going to be moving back to our AP Calculus BC study. So I hope to see you then with those videos. I hope you enjoyed this video going over SAT reading. If you have any more suggestions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. If you haven't already, thank you for sticking around to see this entire video, and good luck on your SAT study. Goodbye.